Good day, everyone. I'm Sahara Nadela from Business Accounting, and today I will discuss about chemical hazards. So, as introduction, any material that can harm human health when swallowed or inhaled is considered a chemical hazard. These are chemicals that can harm a living thing or the environment, whether they are produced as synthetic or naturally occurring substances. There is no doubt that chemical exposure can have both short and long-term impacts on one's health, including poisoning, skin rashes, and disorders of the lungs, kidneys, and liver. The delicate equilibrium of the Earth's ecosystem can be impacted by chemical pollution. Significant soil pollution has been brought on by mining, agriculture, and waste disposal. Lead, cadmium, and mercury can all have an impact on soil quality and the number of microorganisms that promote soil fertility. So, in addition, a chemical hazard is any substance that can cause health problems when ingested or inhaled. Health problems may sometimes be short term or long term. An example of short term is like skin rashes or irritations, and for long term includes complication of the lungs or what we call the tuberculosis. So we are asked to prepare 5 questions regarding our topic, and here's my first question. How do we prevent chemical hazards at home? So, since most of us uses chemicals to clean our homes, we should know how to prevent the hazards brought by the chemicals. So, the following are some of the tips to prevent chemical hazards at home. So, number one is never remove the labels from products that contain hazardous compounds from their original containers unless the container is corroding. So, in order for us to identify what kind of chemicals are we going to use, so we should not remove the labels of the product unless if the container or the labels of the container is already corroding, we could replace it with another labels or transfer it to another container and then relabel it. It is important to repack and label corroding containers. Never keep dangerous substances in containers meant for food. So we all know that chemicals have some toxic substances, and a chemical hazards can be occurred as mentioned earlier through ingestion. So we should never keep the chemicals near the containers for food, or we should not use the same container we are using for food to store chemicals. In addition, never combine home garbage or dangerous substances with other items, and keep out those chemicals of the reach of the children. So number two, why is it important that we need to read the safety instructions before applying chemicals? So even if a person worked with a chemical before at home or in other situation, it's important to be aware of the potential risk and how to manage it appropriately before using. Having awareness of the possible risk will help a person to avoid accident and perform their task safely. So most of the chemicals, especially in the manufacturing, have what they call the safety data sheets or the material safety data sheets, where it includes the the component of the chemicals that you're going to use and how to perform first aid, whether accidents happen. So another question is, what is the first aid to chemical exposure? So if any of us accidentally swallowed or have direct contact with any of the chemicals that we're using at home, the first aid will be like water rinsing or flushing. If this chemical comes into contact with skin, immediately flush it with water. So the process is what we call the water rinsing or flushing. If this chemical penetrates the clothing, remove it immediately and flush the skin with water. If the irritation continues after washing, seek medical attention. So, um, if any of us accidentally in contact with chemicals, we should our first aid will be like water rinsing or flushing. So why should toxic substances be a public concern? It is certain that as a chemical production, importation, and use increase, more chemicals will be released into the environment and pose a larger risk to human health. The vulnerable population, including women and children, are more at risk. So with the immerse of the technology nowadays and the fast pacing of innovation, more chemicals are used in manufacturing facility, and waste of it will be released to environment that will sooner affect us humans. How would a chemical release to the environment affect the public? So chemical spills could contaminate the groundwater, which would then contaminate the drinking water sources. When emissions of harmful pesticides are ingested by crops, grazing animals, or bystanders, this may also have an impact on the food chain. The discharge of the hazardous compounds from air pollution can also affect prepared foods. So we are also asked to prepare a case study regarding our topic. So here's the background of my selected or my chosen incident or case study. So on auto parts, entire company hired an employee, specifically a Firestone technician. The worker received mild chemical burns as a result of accidental exposure to sulfuric acid while performing his job. The Ministry of Labor determined that the worker was injured because of the nozzle of the electric pump became loose due to high pressure. It is discovered that the worker failed to wear personal protective equipment prior to performing his task. He received minor chemical burns as a result of the incident. The company was also fined $70,000 for failing to provide the employee with PPE. So may analysis of the case study using the domino effect theory. So as you can see, the domino effect theory is on the right bottom side of the slide. So here are the stakeholders of the incident. So number one, the employer. It is an Ontario-based Firestone textile company failed to provide its employee with personal protective equipment. So here's the activity of the employer. So the employer failed to provide PPE to his employee. So the worker that has been injured is the Firestone technician who uses sulfuric acid for a lab test and obviously received minor burns. In addition, the government, so the Ministry of Labor who assessed the occurrence, the employer must pay a fine for failing to provide PPE to the employee. So personal defects, the worker failed to wear personal protective equipment before handling chemicals. He is also not knowledgeable on how to handle it properly. So maybe there is no like orientation before the process or the task happen. So unsafe act or condition, the electric pump nozzle loose due to high pressure. Accident, the employee was exposed to sulfuric acid while performing his job. So injury or fatality, so obviously the employee um result or receive a mild chemical burns. So my conclusion to the case to the topic is chemical hazards can harm the human health when handled in improper way. It can cause short and long-term health impacts not only on individuals but also in the environment. To avoid such incident, a person must know the content of the chemicals, how to manage it correctly, and what must be worn before handling chemicals. After the task, make sure to seal the chemical properly, safe keep to its proper storage, throw unreusable PPE such as gloves and perform hand washing right. So suggestion for improvement is an employer may take into account the procedures in the hierarchy of controls to protect employees from exposure. from the most effective and protective controls to the least effective and protective controls are taken into consideration. So what is hierarchy of controls? The hierarchy of controls is a step-by-step approach to eliminating or reducing workplace hazards. It ranks controls from the most effective level of the protection to the least effective level of protection. So we have these steps like elimination, which is the physical removal of the hazard. Substitution is to replace the hazard. Engineering controls to isolate people from the hazard. Administrative controls to change the way people work. And PPE, or the personal protective equipment, is to protect the worker with personal protective equipment. So this is the most effective is the elimination, and the least effective is the PPE. So in the case study, the elimination we can perform is due to the nature of their company, we are unable to stop the removal since the company is using that chemical in order to perform their task. So we cannot eliminate such chemical. So the next step would be the substitution. So if we cannot eliminate, then we could substitute. So look for another version or another type of chemicals with less concentration if possible. So if still substitution is not possible, then we can use engineering controls. So precautionary maintenance should be performed regularly on the machines, like the loosing or the loose nozzle. Maybe the nozzle will become loose because there is no precautionary maintenance performed every month or every other month. Administrative control, so we should conduct seminars to employees for safety awareness and also how to handle chemicals properly. Personal protective equipment, so the employee must wear appropriate PPE such as gloves, eye protector, and respirator. So that will be all for my topic for today. And I hope that you learn something new regarding chemical hazards in workplace and how to prevent them, whether at home or at work. So thank you very much, and goodbye.